There are certain moments in life when a person enters your world and, almost instantly, the idea of coincidence no longer feels believable. You can try to look back at the timeline and explain every event with logic. You can study every detail and attempt to understand why everything happened in the exact order that it did. Yet somewhere deep inside, your intuition already knows that logic was never the true force guiding this connection. There is something about the timing that feels too meaningful to ignore. This person did not simply walk into your reality by chance. Their arrival carried a certain weight. They entered your life in a way that created a clear and lasting change within you. The moment they appeared, something shifted inside your spirit. It may have been quiet, and perhaps nobody else could see it, but it was real. And once that shift happened, it could not simply be reversed. Even now, while you are trying to move forward, while you tell yourself that the chapter has ended, and while you use your mind to explain the distance between you, there is still something pulling your attention back toward them. It is not a desperate pull. It is not the kind of feeling that comes from fear of being alone. It feels more like recognition, like some part of you remembers something that your conscious mind cannot fully explain. If this message has appeared in your path today, perhaps there is a reason you are hearing these words at this exact point in your life. Meaningful messages often reach us when something inside us is finally ready to understand them. Carl Jung famously wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And right now, something within you may be beginning to wake up. There is a quiet form of knowing rising inside you, a feeling that refuses to completely disappear. It tells you that this connection was not something that could simply be erased from your memory and forgotten as though it never mattered. You may have reached a point where you feel divided inside yourself. One part of you wants to hold on, while another part tells you that you should let go. One part of you trusts what you felt, while another part looks at the current situation and begins to question everything. You may ask yourself whether you misunderstood the connection. You may wonder whether you gave meaning to something that was never meant to carry that much meaning. Silence has a powerful way of increasing doubt. Distance can make even a strong heart question what it once knew with certainty. When there are no answers, the mind begins filling the empty spaces with fear. You may have asked yourself whether you imagined the depth between you. Perhaps you have wondered if you simply projected a deeper meaning onto ordinary moments. But if this had only been imagination, time would have slowly taken it away. Real illusions usually lose their strength when they are tested by time. They become weaker when reality continues moving forward. Yet this feeling did not simply disappear. Even after distance, disappointment, silence, and attempts to disconnect, something within you still remembers. Your heart continues returning to the same quiet realization. This person mattered to you, and perhaps they still matter, not necessarily in the way your ego wants, but in the deeper way your inner self recognizes. This does not automatically mean obsession. Obsession is noisy. It is anxious. It demands answers and constant attention. It tries to control outcomes and becomes restless when things do not happen quickly. What you are feeling may be very different from that. It can be quiet and deep. It exists underneath your daily thoughts, underneath your expectations, and underneath the stories you tell yourself. It appears when everything around you becomes still. It may come through dreams, memories, sudden emotions, or moments when their face or name enters your mind without any effort. It feels like something unfinished, something meaningful that has not yet reached its final understanding. When you first met this person, perhaps something old and familiar awakened inside you. It was not simply physical attraction. It was not just the fact that you were compatible on paper. There was something more difficult to explain. It was familiarity without a clear memory attached to it. You may have felt as if you already knew something about them, even though you had only just met. The conversation itself may have been ordinary, but the feeling underneath that conversation was not ordinary. Your nervous system may have experienced comfort and intensity at the same time. That combination is unusual, and when it happens, it can leave a powerful mark on a person. Jung once described the meeting of two personalities as something that can transform both people, comparing it to two chemical substances coming into contact with each other. If there is a reaction, both are changed. That idea speaks directly to what happened here. You were changed by this person. Whether they admit it or understand it clearly, they were changed by you as well. Connections that truly affect us are rarely casual. They rearrange something inside us. They bring hidden feelings to the surface. They open doors within our emotional world that cannot simply be closed again after we have seen what was behind them. Even now, despite the distance and despite the silence, this person may feel more than they are willing or able to show. Not everyone experiences emotions in the same way. Some people feel deeply but have difficulty expressing what is happening inside them. Others speak easily but do not always feel things at the same depth. Silence, therefore, does not always mean a lack of emotion. Sometimes silence appears because there is too much emotion and the person does not know where to place it. Your presence may have awakened something in them that they were not ready to deal with. Instead of moving closer to that feeling, they may have stepped backward. They may have believed that creating distance would make the emotion weaker. They may have hoped that enough time apart would quiet whatever had been awakened inside them. But emotional truth does not always disappear simply because we avoid it. What we refuse to face often waits beneath the surface. In their quiet moments, when their attention is no longer occupied by work, responsibilities, people, entertainment, or everyday distractions, you may come back into their thoughts. They may remember conversations you shared. They may remember small details that you thought they had forgotten. They may remember the way you looked at them, the way you listened, or the way you made them feel understood. Sometimes a person does not realize how deeply someone affected them until they experience life without that person's presence. They may begin to notice the difference between how they felt around you and how they feel in other connections. They may compare the emotional depth they experienced with you to the emotional flatness of certain parts of their current life. That comparison can be uncomfortable. It can create questions they would rather avoid. They may wonder why they still think about you, why certain memories remain so clear, or why distance did not bring the relief they expected. They are not necessarily distant because they do not care. In some cases, people create distance precisely because they care more than they know how to handle. There can be internal battles that you cannot see. Old wounds may still be active. Fear of vulnerability may be stronger than the desire to connect. Fear of losing control, fear of being rejected, fear of being exposed, or fear of being seen too deeply can cause someone to withdraw even when their feelings are genuine. You were never meant to fight their inner battles for them. Their healing belongs to them. Their fears are theirs to face. You can love someone deeply without becoming responsible for saving them from themselves. Sometimes one person becomes emotionally ready before the other. One person is prepared to look at the truth, while the other still resists what that truth reveals. You may have become a mirror for this person. Your presence reflected parts of them that they had pushed aside for years. You may have shown them tenderness they were not used to receiving. You may have made them aware of needs they had convinced themselves they did not have. You may have awakened a desire for honesty, closeness, or emotional safety that they had learned to suppress. And when a person suddenly sees parts of themselves they have avoided, their first reaction is not always to move closer. Sometimes they run from the mirror. Jung explained that until a person makes the unconscious conscious, hidden forces can direct their life, while the person believes those forces are simply fate. This may be what is happening within them now. Their choices may still be influenced by fears and wounds they have not fully recognized. Their withdrawal may not be the complete truth of what they feel. It may be the response of a part of them that is still afraid of what this connection asks them to confront. But once an awakening happens, it cannot easily be reversed. You cannot completely forget what you have truly seen. You cannot return to the same emotional state after discovering something important about yourself. You cannot unknow what your heart has already learned. Your presence may have reminded this person of emotional truth, softness, honesty, tenderness, and authenticity. You reached an area inside them that had been quiet for a very long time. And when someone touches a sleeping part of the heart, that feeling does not always vanish when the person leaves. It can remain in the background. It can change the way they think. It can influence what they want from future relationships. It can make certain forms of emotional distance feel empty. It can make them question why they accepted less before. That is why some connections continue to matter long after communication has stopped. The physical connection may pause, but the inner process can continue. The universe does not always waste meaningful encounters. Sometimes a person enters your life to stay permanently. Sometimes they enter to awaken something that needed to be awakened. Sometimes the purpose of the connection becomes clear only much later. What matters is that something real was activated within you. If this connection were meant to disappear without leaving any trace, perhaps it would have faded naturally. Instead, it continues to echo through memories, dreams, unexpected reminders, and moments when their name appears in your mind without you intentionally searching for it. These moments should not be used as a reason to chase someone. They are not instructions to force a situation. They may simply be reminders to pay attention to your own inner experience. There is a difference between forcing a door open and recognizing that a door may open naturally when the timing and circumstances become right. You do not need to break down every barrier. You do not need to prove your worth. You do not need to convince another person to recognize what you already know about yourself. Your exhaustion is understandable. Loving deeply without having clarity can become emotionally heavy. Waiting for answers that never arrive can drain even a strong person. You may have had nights where your mind replayed every conversation. You may have asked yourself what went wrong, what they are thinking, whether they remember you, or whether you should finally stop caring. These questions are human. They do not make you weak, and your hope does not automatically mean that you are refusing reality. Hope can exist without chasing. Hope can exist while you continue living your own life. It can exist without putting your future on hold. Intuition is not always loud. Sometimes intuition is a quiet feeling that remains even after the emotional storm is past. It does not need to scream for your attention. It simply waits until you become still enough to hear it. Right now, something may be changing beneath the surface. You may not see visible proof yet, but inner changes often happen before outer changes become obvious. Resistance can slowly weaken. Fear can begin to lose its power. A heart that once protected itself through distance can gradually soften when it becomes tired of running from its own truth. And whether this person admits it or not, there may come a point when the possibility of losing you completely feels more painful than the fear of trying again. That does not mean you should sit still and wait for them. It does not mean you should put your life on pause. It means you can allow life to unfold without trying to control every part of the outcome. This may not be the end of the story. It may simply be a pause before greater understanding. It may be a period in which both people are being given space to grow, reflect, and become more honest with themselves. Sometimes silence is not an ending. Sometimes it is the space where transformation takes place. Sometimes distance allows two people to see what they could not see while they were emotionally overwhelmed. When everything is quiet, the truth becomes easier to recognize. What was driven by fear begins to separate from what is genuine. What was based on attachment begins to separate from what is real. You are not being asked to wait blindly. You are being asked to remain rooted in yourself. Continue living. Continue growing. Continue taking care of your own emotional balance. Stay open to what life may bring, but do not abandon yourself while waiting for another person to make a decision. Your life is not supposed to stop because someone else is uncertain. Jung also spoke about patience as something connected to joy. Real patience is not sitting helplessly and counting the days. Grounded patience means trusting that what is meant to become clear will become clear, while still respecting yourself in the present moment. It means you can care without chasing. You can love without begging. You can remember without becoming trapped in the past. You can remain hopeful while continuing to build a life that does not depend on another person's return. The kind of connection that is real does not need constant force. It does not require you to manipulate circumstances. It does not ask you to lose your dignity simply to keep someone close. If something is truly meant to develop, it must eventually meet you in a place where both people are willing to participate. Love cannot survive through one person's effort alone. A meaningful connection requires honesty, courage, responsibility, and emotional readiness from both sides. As you allow this message to settle inside you, notice what you feel without trying to force an answer. Pay attention to what brings peace rather than what creates panic. Truth does not always arrive with a dramatic feeling. Sometimes it simply lands quietly. Sometimes you read something and realize that it describes an emotion you have never been able to explain. Sometimes the confirmation is not excitement but calmness. If your heart becomes calmer as you listen, perhaps that calm is worth paying attention to. Anxiety demands immediate certainty. Inner knowing often does not. Anxiety asks, "What if I lose them?" Inner wisdom asks, "What is true for me right now?" There is a major difference between the two. The connection may not be broken in the way your fear tells you it is. It may simply be changing form. And within that transformation, you are also changing. This is the part the mind often struggles to accept because the mind wants clear labels. It wants to know whether this is love, destiny, timing, separation, reunion, or an ending. It wants a date, a sign, a guarantee, and a final answer. But the deeper part of you may be learning something different. Life does not always provide certainty before growth. Sometimes uncertainty becomes the place where your strongest transformation begins. It forces you to stop depending on external answers. It teaches you to listen to yourself. It removes the illusions you once depended on. It challenges your attachment to specific outcomes. And slowly, it brings you closer to what is actually true. The soul often uses uncertainty as a refining fire. It burns away false expectations, unhealthy dependence, imagined guarantees, and stories created by fear. What remains after those things are removed is much simpler. You begin to understand what you truly want. You begin to recognize what you deserve. You become less willing to accept half-hearted effort. You stop confusing longing with love and fear with intuition. This is why what you are experiencing may not simply be waiting, it may be becoming. You are becoming more aware of yourself, You are becoming stronger in your ability to stand without constant reassurance. You are learning how to love without losing your center. You are learning that another person's silence does not determine your worth. You are learning that someone else's confusion does not have to become your confusion. And perhaps they are going through their own process as well. They may be facing questions they avoided before. They may be recognizing patterns that have followed them through relationships. They may be realizing that running away from vulnerability does not remove the need for connection. They may be discovering that emotional safety cannot be created through avoidance. These are inner changes, and inner changes often happen long before anyone else can see them. So do not measure everything by what is visible today. A person can look completely calm while carrying a great deal inside. A person can appear unaffected while privately remembering everything. A person can continue with daily life while still processing a connection that changed them. Outer silence is not always a complete picture of inner reality.